I'm 82 years old now. I didn't expect to still be here, and I definitely didn't expect to feel this way. I thought happiness was something you either had or didn't, and for most of my life I told myself I had it. I said it so often that I stopped checking whether it was true. I wake up earlier than I need to. There's no alarm, my body just does it. The house is quiet in a way that feels permanent, like the sound has been drained out of it over the years. I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I barely taste, and I look at the same patch of light on the floor every morning. That's usually when the feeling comes, not sadness exactly. More like a slow realization that settles in before I can push it away. Time feels different now. It doesn't stretch forward anymore. It presses down. Every day feels heavier because I know there aren't many left, and because I finally have enough quiet to hear my own thoughts clearly. That's the part no one warns you about. When the noise stops, everything you avoided shows up. I used to think happiness was being comfortable, having a routine, knowing what came next. I was good at that. I built a life that worked on paper, a job that paid the bills, a house that stayed standing, a family that looked fine from the outside. I wasn't miserable, so I assumed I was happy. I didn't realize how low the bar was. In my 20s, I was busy trying to become someone respectable. That word mattered a lot to me back then. I grew up watching my father work himself thin and still worry about money, and I promised myself I wouldn't live like that. So when opportunities came, I took them. Even when they pulled me away from things I cared about, I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was being responsible. I married young. She was patient, quieter than me, and she believed in planning. That felt like safety. We talked about the future like it was something we could control if we just stayed organized enough. I don't remember ever asking her what she was afraid of. I don't think she ever asked me either. We were busy building. The job grew. So did the hours. I was proud of how much I could handle. Long days, late nights, weekends that disappeared into paperwork or meetings. When I came home tired, I wore it like proof that I was doing the right thing. If I snapped or withdrew, I told myself it was just stress. Everyone understood stress. It excused a lot. Our kids came along and I loved them in a way that felt solid but distant. I provided. I showed up for the big things. I told myself that mattered more than small moments. When they wanted me to sit on the floor and play, I'd say later. I really believed there would always be a later. The years didn't pass loudly. They slipped by in ordinary ways. Missed dinners because of work, short conversations before bed, vacations where I spent half the time distracted, nothing dramatic, no single decision that ruined everything, just 1,000 small ones that leaned in the same direction. I remember thinking sometime in my 40s that life felt settled, predictable. I mistook that for peace. What it really was, I see now, was numbness. I had stopped asking myself whether I was present. I was just efficient. My wife would sometimes look at me like she was waiting for something I wasn't giving. I noticed it, but I didn't know what to do with it. I assumed it was normal. Marriage is cooled, that's what people said. I believed them because it let me off the hook. We didn't fight much. That's something people praise, but silence can be its own kind of damage. Problems don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they just sit quietly until they become permanent. The kids grew up. They became adults with their own lives, their own schedules. When they stopped calling as often, I told myself that was how it was supposed to be. I said I was proud of their independence. I didn't admit how strange it felt to realize I didn't know the details of their lives anymore. Retirement came and everyone congratulated me. I remember shaking hands and smiling, feeling like I had crossed some finish line. But when the structure disappeared, I felt exposed. I had spent decades defining myself by what I did, and suddenly there was nothing demanding me anymore. I didn't know who I was without obligations. My wife and I were alone together in the house for the first time in years, and we didn't know how to talk to each other. We had shared a life, but we hadn't shared ourselves in a long time. We moved around each other politely, like co-workers finishing out a contract. She got sick in her 70s. Nothing sudden, a slow decline. Appointments, medications, careful days. I took care of what needed to be done. I was good at logistics, but there were moments when she reached for something else. Reassurance, presence. I didn't always recognize it in time. The day she died was quiet, too quiet. I sat beside her bed holding her hand, thinking of all the things I assumed we'd talk about someday, that someday never came. When it was over, I felt a kind of shock that didn't go away, not just grief, regret layered underneath. After that, the house felt bigger and emptier at the same time. I filled my days with routines, grocery shopping, walking the same route around the neighborhood, watching television. I didn't care about just to hear voices. People checked in at first, then less often. I didn't blame them. Everyone has their own lives. It wasn't until I turned 82 that the thought finally landed, clear and unavoidable. I wasn't unhappy because I was lonely now. I was lonely because I had been absent then. I had spent my life assuming connection would wait for me. It doesn't. I thought about all the times I chose productivity over presence, all the conversations I postponed, all the affection I assumed was understood without being expressed. I had been so focused on not failing that I never asked myself what success actually felt like. There are things you can't fix at this age. Apologies come too late. People are gone, or they've learned how to live without you. Even when they forgive you, the shape of the relationship is already set. Time doesn't rewind just because you finally see clearly. I still talk to my children, but there's a distance that feels earned. They're kind to me, they check in, but I can hear the parts of their lives that don't include me, and I know why. I was there, but not really there. That distinction matters more than I ever understood. Some nights I sit in the dark and replay moments that seemed insignificant at the time. A child waiting at the door, a wife pausing before speaking, a chance to listen that I let pass. Those moments were small, but they were everything. I don't say this because I think my life was a waste. It wasn't. There was love in it. There was effort. There were good intentions. But good intentions don't replace attention. You don't feel the cost until the bill comes due. If you're listening to this and you're younger, I'm not here to give advice. I wouldn't have listened either. I just want you to know that happiness isn't something you assume into existence. It's something you notice while it's happening, or you miss it. I thought I was happy because nothing was falling apart. I didn't realize that some things disappear quietly without ever breaking. They just fade from use. Now, at 82, I understand myself better than I ever have. That's the cruel part. Clarity arrives when your ability to act on it is almost gone. All I can do is sit with it and try to be honest about what I see. Most days I accept it. I make peace with the life I lived, even with its thin places. Some days are harder. The quiet feels too honest. But I'm still here, still breathing, still capable of telling the truth to myself. And maybe that counts for something. If this meant something to you, if any of it felt familiar, I hope you don't wait as long as I did to really look at your life while it's still unfolding. I'm 82 years old. This is what I know now.